Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Coming up, more than 40 years after America declared a war on cancer, researchers and doctors have made important strides in the diagnosis and treatment of the disease. But with cancer still the second leading cause of death in America, great challenges still remain. So how does a rural state like Idaho measure up? We'll talk about that with two experts and introduce you to a woman who's been fighting cancer for 16 years. That's Dialogue next. Stay tuned.
There are some oncologists who drop out of oncology. They say the tragedy of losing patients is too difficult for them. I've lost a lot of patients because I've been around a long time, and it is difficult. But I haven't lost my ability to say this is a step on the road to eventual success. And if I am not successful, my successors will be successful. You have to believe in the future, and I do.
Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. You were just watching a clip from Cancer, the Emperor of All Maladies, a three-part PBS series based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning book by the same name. The program examines both the challenges and successes in the treatment of cancer. It airs at 8 p.m. on March 30th, March 31st, and April 1st, right here on Idaho Public Television. Now today on Dialogue, I'll talk with two guests about how a rural state like Idaho is faring in that fight. With large distances between hospitals, no medical school, and low screening rates, there are definitely hurdles. But there is innovation as well. Our conversation in just a moment. First, though, a look at the perseverance of a woman from a small Idaho town who's been fighting cancer for 16 years.
Kiss, kiss. Come here. Come here.
It's a simple pleasure, playing with your dogs. But for Carrie Hug, even a small activity like this isn't taken for granted.
I mean, they told me back in 2002, there's nothing more we can do for you.
Doctors diagnosed Carrie with breast cancer in 1998 when she was only 33. She had surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. But 4 years later, the cancer had spread throughout her body.
My son came home from school one day and he goes, Ira's mom said that you're going to die. What do you tell him? And so I told him, I said, we'll go by how I feel. And today I feel good.
13 years later, Carrie still feels good. But that doesn't mean the road has been easy or that the journey is over. Her cancer was initially misdiagnosed and left untreated. Her first surgery was botched. Since then, she's endured 2 6-month rounds of chemo, 4 extensive rounds of radiation, and over 25 surgeries. And every 3 weeks, Hug drives an hour from her home in rural Cambridge, Idaho, to a cancer treatment center.
There is days you wake up and you're too sick to get down there. It's when it's snowy, slushy, foggy. It's hard to drive. The canyon is always icy. You have to watch it.
And when gas was $4 a gallon, the choices were tough.
And it was either gas or feed the kids, and I had to go in and get on food stamps for 6 months. It was rough.
Carrie's destination, the Mountain States Tumor Institute Clinic in Fruitland, Idaho, on the Oregon border.
Do another breath then. Oh, sorry. You okay?
Yep.
That's where she receives a drug called Herceptin. Carrie's been taking Herceptin since 2002 when it was still in trials. It saved her life.
I don't think there's anyone that was at that original meeting that would have known we would have had today with Carrie. And that is a huge blessing and a huge celebration. And that's one of the things that makes cancer work so rewarding, is that you can make a huge difference.
Good. How are you?
See you. Oh my gosh, look at you.
Dr. Sarah Bollender, an oncologist, suggested Herceptin for Carrie.
She's a doctor that walks in and says, hey, girlfriend, whatever problem you have, she puts together something to attack it. You don't give up with her.
Dr. Bollender won't give up on another idea either.
She wants to make sure patients like Carrie and this woman, Kathleen, who travels 150 miles round trip every day from Baker City, Oregon for radiation, have a place to stay in town if they don't feel well or the weather is bad. It would be a respite house like this one in Boise, operated by St. Luke's Hospital, which also owns the Fruitland Clinic.
So if they could come and stay, then it would take away the stress, the cost. What we're trying to do here is give big city medicine, but in a small town. And that would be like a home away from home.
To build the house and an expanded treatment center, St. Luke's has challenged the rural area around the clinic. If residents raise $2.5 million, St. Luke's will contribute $22.5 million.
Oh, this is so beautiful. Look at this.
Shelley Colvard is another former patient of Dr. Bollender's. She's with a nonprofit called Surviving Hearts that's been holding fundraisers for the respite house, including auctioning items like this quilt.
And this would answer a lot of those issues for people that are struggling with trying to figure out how to get to treatment, and a lot of people choose not to because they can't get here.
Hi, Deanne. I'm Carrie. Hi, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All righty.
Because she knows how tiring and expensive it can be, Carrie volunteers with another nonprofit, Angel Wings Network, which helps transport cancer patients. Today, she's taking a woman from a rural town to her treatment 25 miles away.
You know, you can be poor me, or you can get out and you can help others and not focus on yourself. And to me, the more I help others, the less I think about me.
Another thing that helped Carrie was writing a book about her life's challenges. It's called Hidden Scars, Tattoos on the Soul.
It took 2 years to do, but it was a healing journey.
With treatment every 3 weeks, though, and the ever-present fear that the cancer could return, the worries never completely go away.
It gets tiring. It gets repetitious, and, you know, do I really want to do this any longer? And then I have to remember what I have going for, and yes, I do. We do this till I draw my last breath. That's just, we continue. Today I feel good, we'll go with that. We don't look to the future, we don't hold on to the past. It's one day at a time.
And my thanks to Carrie for sharing her story. To learn more about her book and the nonprofits mentioned in the piece, check out the Dialogue website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. Now, I have two guests with me in the studio to explore the themes in the piece further. Dr. Dan Zuckerman is the Executive Medical Director of the St. Luke's Mountain States Tumor Institute. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Marcia.
Also joining me is Professor Cheryl Jorsic. She's a researcher at Boise State who's studying metastatic breast cancer in the hopes of creating a treatment for the devastating disease. Thanks as well for being here.
Hi, Marcia.
First to you, Dr. Zuckerman, one day at a time. That's what Carrie said, one day at a time. I'm sure you hear that from your patients a lot.
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely, I think, something that's a lesson for all of us. I think that when patients get diagnosed with cancer, they're overwhelmed with information and fear and uncertainty about the future, and I think that that's something that grounds our patients, their families, us as their caregivers, and that's the reality, is that there really is only today. And as you know, Carrie points out, the things that happened in the past we can't change, and the things in the future we don't know, and this is what we have before us. So I think it's kudos to her for reminding us of that.
Another reality, so to speak, is that Herceptin, the drug that is saving her life, that is keeping her alive, also is having devastating side effects. We know now that that drug damages the heart.
Right.
And that's what's happening with Carrie as well. This double-edged sword of the treatments that you have, that you can prescribe as a doctor, and the side effects.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, you get it, really what's sort of the central struggle for us as we take care of people with cancer is it is a double-edged sword. I mean, the holy grail of oncology would be to find a treatment that specifically takes care of the cancer, only touches the cancer, and leaves us alone. And Herceptin is close to that. It really is specific, and it's obviously helped to keep Carrie alive for over a decade and will hopefully continue to do so. But in a few percentages, the drug actually mimics and attacks one of the proteins in our heart, and that's unfortunately what's causing some of her symptoms. And I think that's what we're always striving for, more effective therapies and less toxic therapies.
At the same time, she was afforded the opportunity in a rural area to try to be on a trial drug, which panned out. And not very many adults in Idaho have access to these trials. She did. It happens to be the hospital you're affiliated with, and it happens to be that she's in a rural area. So would you like to see more people participating in trials like this?
Oh, absolutely. I think
what could help that?
Well, I think it's just an increased awareness. I think that people often come in with their cancer diagnosis and feel like they want to be treated yesterday, and it's completely understandable, and to resist the urge to just rushing into treatment and frankly to press us as their as their primary doctors to ask us.
To ask you, are there any trials out there? Does a state like Idaho get a lot of trial drugs? I mean, how are we placed that way in the United States?
Well, actually, we can do actually quite a few amazing things from Misty, where we're based in Boise and have centers in rural areas like where Carrie was treated in Fruitland, and we open trials that come from pharma or either come from the federal government. Or one thing that we've learned to do is to begin to work with other larger institutions, and so
like Swedish and
yes,
Seattle.
Exactly, and so that's points to an NCI, which is the National Cancer Institute grant that Misty got with Swedish in Seattle and Providence and Portland to actually form a cancer consortium so that we can open each other's trials and expand the number of trials that we have here for patients not just in Boise but all over the areas in Idaho where there are clinics like ours. So that's something we definitely promote, and we hope that our patients ask us and hold us accountable to that.
But good point for anyone, whether they're going to your clinics or not, talk to the doctor, ask what trials might be available, and you might refer people out as well, right?
Absolutely. If we don't, I mean, our job is to help take the best care of the patient and their family. And so obviously we'd love to have that and be able to bring that here, but in instances where we don't have experimental agents, we often have to refer people out. And if that's what we need to do, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Now, Professor Jorsik, this must have been strike quite a chord for you, this story, because you are in fact studying metastases of breast cancer to the bone, just as Carrie had in your research lab.
Right, and with breast cancer, as with most cancers, a patient doesn't die because of a primary tumor that they get. That usually can be removed surgically. It's the metastasis or spread of that cancer to other parts of the body. And bone is a particularly painful and potentially dangerous place for breast cancer to metastasize. So yes, we've been studying a particular protein that we think drives breast cancer metastasis.
Oncostatin?
Oncostatin M, or OSM for short, yes.
And it's without getting too technical, it has to do with inflammation, yes?
Right, its normal function in the body is as an inflammatory protein. So if you were to get a cut on your arm or something like that and get a bacterial infection, you would have inflammation. Immune cells would bring this protein in, secrete it into the area, and help the area get cleaned up and help wound healing. So there's believed to be a link between chronic levels of inflammatory proteins in your body and aggressive cancer. So we've been studying oncostatin M in terms of tumor metastasis, yes.
You've had some very large grants. Talk to me about how you're feeling at this point. Are you optimistic that what you're doing in your lab will lead to help for somebody like Carrie?
Well, we would love to think that we are working towards a path to develop a new drug that could eventually contribute to cocktails that cancer patients might take. So if we do develop a new drug that works, it would be a targeted therapy. So again, that would go after certain patients. So it would be only the patients who had a high level of oncostatin M already associated with their cancer. And then those patients could take this therapy or potentially a preventative agent that might be taken right after the primary surgery or even before the primary surgery to try to stop those cells from breaking free from the tumor and metastasizing to other parts of the body.
Now, for those people watching who who have a different kind of cancer, might this be applicable as well to other cancers besides metastatic breast cancer?
Well, even though we have absolutely wonderful students and researchers in the lab at Boise State, we don't have enough to study all cancers. So the only ones that we've looked at so far are prostate cancer, and it does look like oncostatin M is important in this process as well. And we're going to also look at ovarian cancer soon, but we haven't looked at any others. I would guess it might play a role with many different types of carcinomas.
Talk about the collaboration between your two entities, because we do not have a medical school in Idaho. We don't have a teaching institution. What are the two of you doing to work together on these type of experimental processes?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I still remember the first year I moved back to Idaho. I grew up here and had just left Boston. I was on call and got a page, and it was actually Cheryl, was just cold calling oncologists at Misty and asking if we were interested in doing some local collaborations, which historically we had not really fleshed out. And so I still remember that call was many years ago, and it's really come to fruition in just this last year, where we've been able to get Misty patients involved in some of the research, and I just sort of let Cheryl sort of describe what we've been doing with that.
Yeah, so of course I'm very grateful for Dan to move back to Idaho and be willing to start working with people at Boise State to get these types of collaborations going. But basically, if we were to develop a drug that could either prevent metastasis or treat it, who would be the patients that would get that treatment? So if it's a targeted therapy, it would be people with high levels of oncostatin M. So one of our studies right now that we're doing with Misty is taking blood samples from breast cancer patients who are volunteers on a clinical study and testing their blood or serum for levels of oncostatin M. And then we can break them down into different categories, whether they're estrogen receptor positive or negative, HER2 positive or negative, and see if we can correlate high metastases with oncostatin M levels and that kind of thing, and then eventually use that as a way to follow people for whether they should get treatment or not.
What would having a medical school in this state do for cancer research and treatment, potentially?
Potentially, I mean, it would be great. I think that we sort of run up against a ceiling here in terms of the complexity and the breadth of clinical trials and experimental therapeutics that we can offer patients. And this project that Cheryl's described, I mean, it's a great thing. It is what we call translational research, where we're really bringing the bench to the bedside. And this is one example, but frankly, it's only one example of things that Cheryl and I were able to do in earlier parts of our lives at larger institutions. So having a medical school here from our standpoint as a cancer center would be phenomenal.
Well, in fact, we're, I believe, one of 5 states without a medical school, and the state with the largest population without a medical school. So it is intriguing that we don't have one. I know there's a lot of resistance in the legislature to that. I want to cycle back to the issue of rural Idaho. There's also a concern about screening rates in this state. We're very low in terms of that would be people going to get their mammograms, people getting their colonoscopies and such, yes. At the bottom in some areas. Yeah, no, that's right. It's, we're a little embarrassed to say that we're 50th in the country in terms of screening for breast cancer, which is our mammograms that many men and women know, and 38th in the country for colorectal cancer screening. We're also behind in cervical cancer screening, and that's it's disheartening, because these are cancers that are actually preventable in the case of colon cancer, and in the case of breast and cervical cancer. Actually, we can catch these earlier, and they're much more curable. Well, I wanted to play a quote from one of your colleagues, Dr. Bollender, who we saw in the initial piece, about the challenges of rural people working on the farms far away from a place where they could be tested, and what she sees.
The work is sun up to sundown, and that it's far to get to screening. We try and bring, mobile mammogram vans out and things like that. But many times people do present at a higher stage because they haven't had just regular maintenance. So there is a higher acuity when people come in, and it's more of a hurry up and get going because it's more of an emergency.
You see that as well, more advanced cancers here?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's the direct corollary to the fact that we have lower screening rates here, and it's just like my partner, Dr. Bollender, states. It's there are a lot of issues in rural areas in terms of access to care, some cultural. I think we live in a proud and rugged state where I think there are some cultural aspects to us being sort of rugged individuals here in Idaho, and that's been to our great benefit. But sometimes that can partly be the barrier. Some of it is just purely cost, and we have to recognize that a lot of our fellow rural Idahoans are struggling, just like she said, working, and they have to take time out of work to travel far to do a test when they feel fine. So it's certainly understandable why these things don't happen, but we want to try and reverse that.
I want to ask about another challenge. As I mentioned in the piece, Carrie was initially misdiagnosed, and eventually did see a specialist, but there's a lack of specialists in the state as well, isn't there, for certain types of cancer in particular, and doctors have to more generalize.
Absolutely. I think that, certainly I trained in a very specialized center in Boston where there were, people who took care of just left upper lobe lung cancers, right. And that was all they knew, or certain molecular subsets of breast cancer. And here we are, for the most part, general oncologists. A few of us subspecialize for some of the really complex leukemias and bone marrow transplants, so some of my partners do that. But we do have few specialists. I will have to say, for my colleagues who are primary care doctors, we also have a shortage of primary care doctors, but it's certainly something we feel. There's not enough cancer specialists in this state. It's a little bit hard to recruit here, and this is well demonstrated nationally. It's similar in Montana and Wyoming. I mean, we have states with similar themes and issues.
Would you like to see, what's your dream? Would it be, have an NCI or National Cancer Institute center here?
Well, that would be the dream, is to be able to grow our cancer center, to have, frankly, we would need something like a medical school or a basic science research center, whether we call it that or not. And frankly, look, it's about the patients. It's about, having an institution here, becoming an institution like that, where patients don't have to leave. It's one of the scariest times in their lives, and it's upsetting to know that, okay, we're going to get the medical piece down, we have the immunotherapy, the chemotherapy, the radiation therapy, but if people have to leave for that, it's all the more unsettling and makes it harder to go through their journey.
And researchers and physicians look towards this genetics is helping solve some of this, unlock it maybe to the point where we can all go get tested, see what's in our genes, those of us who want to know, and then have kind of these individualized medicines made for us. What's your feeling about that?
Well, it would be a combination of therapies designed or put together like a cocktail for each individual patient and the particular mutations that their cancer presented. So I think that is a hope for the future, and patients should be excited about the possibility. Over 200 cancer drugs are in clinical trials right now to become FDA
I know somebody's
approved.
taking a pill for lung cancer, and it just happened, as he put it, hit the jackpot because his genes matched.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and some of those drugs are not even quite sure how they work, right. But they're in clinical trials and doing well. And so a cocktail would be a wonderful thing for these patients.
But there's concerns as well, right?
Exactly. We're very concerned that trying to get combination therapies through clinical trials to get FDA approved in combinations might be difficult. So we'll look to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to try to speed things along. But there has been some promising new cancer drugs that came out in a short period of time.
We know that there are some things that we can prevent. Melanoma's high in Idaho. We know what to do, in terms of wearing sunscreen and keeping yourself out of the sun, not going to tanning beds. I'm seeing more and more young people smoking. There are some things that we know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that we know that, the majority of cancer, comes down to lifestyle choices and frankly a bit of genetic luck. But just as you stated, Marcia, we live in a state where we're very outdoorsy. I'd actually spoken to the state epidemiologist about this, and one thing that was very interesting is that he pointed out that one of the reasons we have higher melanoma rates here is that we're so far west in the time zone. So we stay out later. We get a lot more sun exposure, but it is completely preventable melanoma with with sunscreen, staying covered, and for those who are age appropriate, getting their skin examined. And the same is true for smoking. We know that physical activity is huge, and all of us as oncologists have become, even though we still do tobacco cessation counseling, we've begun to say that sitting is the new smoking. So we know that prolonged sedentariness actually promotes cancer growth in addition to other cardiovascular issues. So there's a lot to be said about lifestyle.
Well, if there's somebody watching who has just been diagnosed, or you have a family member, I wanted to go back to Carrie Hug, who was the woman profiled in our piece at the top of the program, and take a listen to her advice for you if you've just been diagnosed.
Breathe. Take a deep breath. If you're newly diagnosed, it takes time to figure out what stage. And that's the hardest part, is you want to know now. Get second opinions. Don't just take what you're told right off the bat. We are now in technology where you can find anything on the internet, Google it, but don't scare yourself because there's a lot of bad stuff out there too. If you have a local network, get a hold of them and get somebody's hand to hold. Don't try to do it by yourself.
Don't try and do it by yourself. Pretty good advice. In my research for this program, there's lots of nonprofits out there that are doing amazing things, helping people. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, as a physician, I'm sure you refer out.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's, we acknowledge that. I mean, we're there and we're focused, again, on the patient and the medical piece, but we love the help from our friends who are, like the American Cancer Society or Cancer Connection of Idaho, who help and fill those spaces that are critical spaces for patients, whether we see it's for help with travel or for recovery. They're partners in this journey with us and the patient.
Right. Many people are driving patients.
Yeah.
Like Carrie is. You're involved with a nonprofit as well, Expedition Inspiration.
Right. And they actually are raising money for research and trying to improve, the research opportunities. And that's an Idaho-based foundation, so that's really nice.
Need for palliative care as well, I'm sure, which is an up-and-coming field, helping people who are at the end feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the things that it's difficult. I mean, finding that balance of when someone is sick enough or beyond the point where standard or experimental therapy can be helpful. It's been around for a long time. I think it's a difficult uptake. I think it's hard to talk to people and families about it, but it's definitely something it helps ease suffering. It helps families, unfortunately, with patients who are close to the end.
We have very limited time left, but on balance, how are both of you feeling if we were to do the show, 20 years from now? What's your sense of where we'd be in?
Well, I'd like to say that we might not even be having this conversation. Wouldn't that be wonderful? A lot of drugs are going to come out in the next 20 years, and so I think the shift is going to be from treating and to prevention. So it'll all be about trying to keep people from getting cancer in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. I think a focus on prevention and screening is critical. And I would have to mention just in this segment that immunotherapy is really probably the biggest thing that's just creeping into the present day. And I hope that 20 years from now, just like Cheryl said, that we're not having this conversation, but that many of the treatments, because there still will likely be cancer, but are treated with immunotherapy using the body's own immune system to treat these cancers. And we're just beginning to see that in our clinics, just emerging out of clinical trials, and offers great hope for our patients now and patients in the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank my guests, Dr. Dan Zuckerman from the Mountain States Tumor Institute and Professor Cheryl Joysick of Boise State University. If you'd like to know more about the National PBS Program on Cancer or where you can go in Idaho for cancer treatment and support, we have a comprehensive list on our website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. For Dialogue, I'm Marcia Franklin.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. Check out our website, become a friend on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter.